Hey, folks, welcome back. This is a progression. We talked about the four passions: fear, sorrow, hope, and joy. Talked about spiritual directors, their goals to move you from evil, uh, ground you in prayer, establish you in acts of virtue, and then ultimately be docile to God, the Holy Spirit, docile to the Creator. I should tell you that there is a dialogue going on in this spiritual life, and it's the ways and means. And I want to introduce you to the ways. There's two general ways. I want this concept on your map. You never have to go there. You can say I'm wrong. I am a witness, and I'm sharing with you what I was taught. There is the ordinary and the extraordinary. So the ordinary is simply as we progress, there are rules to life. The ordinary way would be for me not to go up on the roof and jump off, tweet like a bird, and assume that God's going to save me, that I'm going to fly like a bird. The ordinary way is that pear trees produce pears, they don't produce puppies, okay? That's the ordinary way. The extraordinary way has to do with visions, has to do with bilocation, levitation. That's the extraordinary way. Going back to the spiritual director, move you from evil, ground you in prayer, establish you in virtue, and move you to docility. It's supposed to be through the ordinary means. You actually, in Carmel, John of the Cross, a doctor of the church, would, if you came with him with extraordinary miracles, is an extraordinary way. Miracles is produced by God. And it was produced by God because we are weak and we need the miracle to move us forward. But it's love, patient suffering is where we give back to God. A smile from bruised lips is what we give back to God. And he's focusing on that ordinary way, even though he was a mystic and he was the master of all parts of the spiritual life, the purgative, the illuminative, the unitive, he always stressed the ordinary. The mother and father, you're stirring the soup, child on your hip, the ordinary way to perfection. And the extra, in fact, he took his friars in his day, and this is in the 1500s, in medieval Spain, he's taking his friars to a hut where there was a stigmatist to let the friars see the wounds in the hands of this stigmatist. I don't know the name of the stigmatist. The stigmatist, to my knowledge, never became a saint, but John of the Cross would not go in the hut. He wanted his faith to be pure, unsupported by this other type of phenomena. So I just want that on your radar screen. I want that on your map of knowledge. You don't have to camp out there, but as you're reading John of the Cross, know that he's thinking like that. He wants you to be transformed in pure faith, uniting your intellect with the intellect of God. That's the ways. And so oftentimes you will see in the problems of the church or where they are wounded, they will take the exception and they will focus on the exception and they will invert logic. And so they will talk about this exception to the rule and not the rule itself. Beware of that. We'll talk about that more later. I'm trying to avoid controversy, so I'm trying to keep this pure and talk to all souls. I said ways and means. The means, there is a general means to perfection, and then there's the specific. We'll talk about that later. We'll break it down. But in this, I want to introduce you to, there is a concept of that God can call you by a general means. The sacraments, prayer, working on acts of virtue. But there are some souls, the goal is the same. The destination is always the same. Union with God, coming home to the kingdom of our Father, living in communion with one another and our Father. But the means can be general or specific, and it's General means are adequate for you to get to God. But some of us he may call specifically. He may call you to be a physician, call me to be an attorney. He may call some to follow him in four. The church is discerned 4 general ways that he can call you. Some are called to follow him more closely. Jesus as a praying Jesus. That's the Carmelites. That's a specific means. It doesn't mean we abandon the general means. Then some are called to follow Jesus as the preaching Jesus. That's the Dominicans. It doesn't mean they give up the general means. You walk over the threshold of religion, you don't give up common sense. Again, you don't climb up on the roof, tweet like a bird, and try to fly. That is, we are told, there's a law of gravity in the general means of perfection. You do not defy the law of gravity. Now, the third thing, you can follow God. God can call you by a specific means as doing good to our neighbor. The Franciscans are acts of goodness to the neighbor. Doesn't mean they don't pray. It doesn't mean that they're not preaching, but that specific means is to, the soup lines, the soup kitchens, praying and visiting the marginalized. There's a fourth means, and that is dialoguing with the world. That's the Jesuits, dialoguing with political systems. Doesn't mean a lawyer, a doctor, a mother, or father can't do that, but there is a general division from the mindset of the Catholic Church. It's embedded in canon law. There are 4 means, 4 specific ways that God can call a soul. You can't limit God. We are receiving from God. We receive knowledge. We receive our life, and we've discerned this. You may be called in a different way, but what we do know, we want to talk about here. I hope that's helpful for you. Again, capping the ways and means. There's the ordinary and the extraordinary. Focus on the ordinary. If you're hearing voices and visions and you're levitating, I'll give you this thought. John of the Cross was so absorbed in God that when you never give up your duty. He would rap his knuckles against the wall to come to focus on the duty that he was involved in, because he knew God will never call you by a way contrary to the duty he's given you. Okay? You may transition off the breast as an infant to solid food, but you're not going to give up your duties as a human being. You're not going to give up common sense. You're not going to give up and walk away from your job and the responsibility that you have. It's a lot. Good theology is good psychology. This is just a basic introductory tape. If you have any questions, talk to your priest, talk to your spiritual director, talk to them. But I want John of the Cross to speak to you. And so many people tell you what they think he says instead of letting him speak. I want John of the Cross to speak. I want Carmel to speak. And then you decide. Okay?